If you'll bear with me just 1 second, I will get the Facebook stream going live.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. McCord indicated to me he would like to start off with a Christmas carol.
Yes. Father Christmas.
Okay.
Give us your money.
I was just curious what you're going to
make us annoyed.
Just curious as to what you're going to sing for us tonight.
I'm got a little scratchy throat. I would, but don't know what's going on. It's probably because I was out in the cold wind yesterday picking up trash all day.
With the city?
By myself on
Well, good.
on 109. I got tired of looking at it.
You know, I actually drove past you and thought that looked like Bill out there picking up trash. And
Did you really? You should have honked at me.
well, you know,
You guys remember the old Indian commercial
Oh yeah.
back in the day?
Yes, the crying guy
Mm-hmm.
crying because people were throwing trash out.
Yep.
That's what's happening to me yesterday.
Looks like we got a gang.
I wouldn't say I was crying. I might have been doing something else. But
Ladies and gentlemen, the meeting is open to the public and going live on Facebook in 3, 2, 1. We are now live streaming on Facebook, and members of the public are in the audience along with the media and applicants.
Thank you, Josh. I will call to order this meeting of the Gallatin Municipal Regional Planning Commission for Monday, December 14th, 2020. Tonight's meeting is a regular agenda meeting. We don't have a work session during the month of December. So a lot of these items that we see on the agenda tonight are the first time we'll see them. So we may need to spend a little bit more time on some of these. Let me start the meeting out by reading a short message pursuant to the Governor's Executive Orders number 16, number 34, number 51, number 60, and number 65, and the need to limit the community spread of COVID-19. Members of the Planning Commission will participate by electronic means, and the meeting will be live streamed to protect the public health, safety, and welfare of the members and citizens of Gallatin. The first thing we'll do is hold a combination roll call vote and a vote by the members to be in favor of holding this meeting by electronic means. So when your name is called, please respond by saying present and approve if you approve of holding the meeting by electronic means. Mary Ann, will you please take a roll call vote?
Yes. Chair Pereira.
Present and approve.
Vice Chair Harris.
present and approve.
Mr. Wilson.
Present and approve.
Councilman Fennell.
Present and approve.
Dr. Orgain. Oh, was that Dr. Orgain?
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Mr. Strouder.
Present and approve.
Ms. Hibbler.
Present and approved.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. We'll start with an invocation. Mr. Strouder, would you do the honor of leading us in prayer?
Yes, sir. Let us bow. Father, we bow before you this season of Advent. It's time set aside for the coming of our son Jesus. We thank you, O Master, for watching over us. We ask you to keep us in your care. On these unusual circumstances, O Master, we look to you for health, strength, and guidance. We're praying for the bereaved, those sick and shut in, but we know all things are possible through you. So continue to direct and guide us, O Master, that we do the things that you find pleasing in your sight. Thank you for where you brought us from and where you're leading us to. And we ask it all in Christ's name and for his sake. Amen.
Amen. And although I don't see him on screen, I'll bet Mr. Wilson is the one man present in the council chambers. Is that correct?
That is correct.
As always, Mr. Wilson, you're there with the flag. Will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with justice and liberty for all.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Does the secretary have prior minutes to submit for approval?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I've got minutes dated October the 12th, October the 26th, and November the 2nd. I move we approve.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Wilson and a second by Councilman Fennell. Any discussion on those prior minutes? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Mary Ann, will you please take a roll call? All in favor of approval of the minutes indicate by saying aye.
Yes, sir. Chair Pereira,
Aye.
Vice Chair Harris,
Aye.
Mr. Wilson, Councilman Fennell. Councilman Fennell,
Aye.
Dr. Orgain,
Yes.
Strouder,
Aye.
Ms. Hibbler.
yes,
Passes 7-0.
Thank you. So the first order of business is our consent agenda. We have a total of 13 items on the agenda tonight, but the first 5 items are considered consent agenda, which are fairly routine, procedural, non-controversial items. Let me read through those for the benefit of those in the public. Let me read through the names of the items on the consent agenda. They include item number 1, the surety renewals and extensions, City of Gallatin. Number 2 is Noble Park Townhomes, a final plat. Number 3 is Meadow Glen at Fairway Farms, Section 3, a preliminary plat renewal. Item number 4 is Meadow Glen at Fairway Farms, Section 4, a preliminary plat renewal. And item 5 is Facebook Warehouse site plan. Is there any member of the public who would like to have any one of those 5 items pulled from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda? Josh, do we have anyone electronically raising their hand?
Ladies and gentlemen, if you are joining us in the public gallery, at the bottom of your screen, you have a button that says raise your hand. If you would like to speak on any of the items that are on the consent agenda that are listed as items 1 through 5, at this time, please indicate so by raising your hand or unmuting your microphone if you are one of our 5 callers on Zoom. So again, use the raise your hand function at the bottom of the screen, or unmute your microphone if you are one of our 5 phone-in callers. Mr. Chairman, at this time, no one has raised their hand indicating they would like to speak on this item, and we have received no voicemails or emails on any of the consent agenda items.
Thank you, Josh. Is there any member of the commission who would like to have any one of those 5 items pulled from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda for discussion? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda as one item.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion by Councilman Fennell,
Second.
second by Albert Strawther. Any discussion on the consent agenda items? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Mary Ann, will you take a roll call vote? All in favor of approval of the consent agenda items indicate by saying aye.
Yes, sir. Chair Pereira,
Aye.
Vice Chair Harris,
Aye.
Mr. Wilson, Councilman Fennell,
Aye.
Dr. Orgain, Mr. Strouder,
Aye.
Ms. Hibbler.
aye,
Passes 7-0.
Thank you, Miriam. Hey, before we move into the before we move into the regular agenda, I just need to ask, can y'all hear me okay? Because someone told me the other day, this is poor audio I have on this phone.
Loud and clear back here.
Sounds good.
Okay, they must have been hard of hearing then. Okay. We'll move to item number 6, which is resolution number 2020-169, the Bowles Farm Plan of Service and Annexation. I will mention that before we have a staff report on this, that this is a large item. The applicant will be requesting a deferral of this item, so this will be more of a we'll treat this as a work session topic to introduce us to the item. But we wanted to talk about it tonight, and there may be people in the public who wish to speak and comment on this. This item does come with a public comment. We will handle everything. We just won't be deliberating on the matter. So item number 6, which staff member is presenting this item?
Jillian Ogden, staff planner.
Okay, thank you, Jillian. Go ahead.
And I was going to, if that's all right with you, talk about 6, 7, and 8, particularly because they are asking for a deferral on all 3 items. If that works for you, I was going to, the comprehensive plan, which is item 7, requires a public hearing at this meeting because we've already advertised it. So I'll bring in the annexation and rezoning, but they have asked to defer to the January work session and formal meeting. So I was going to do all 3, if that's all right.
Please do. Yes,
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. Items 6, 7, and 8 are on tonight's agenda for the Bowles property located at Red River Road and Highway 109. Prior to tonight's meeting, the applicant has formally requested for deferral of these 3 items until the January work session and regular meeting. However, the comprehensive plan amendment was advertised, so we need to hold this public hearing. I will give a brief introduction to the project, some context, and some reference to the annexation and rezoning requests, and then the Planning Commission can hold the public hearing. There will likely be additional public hearings in January. Next slide, please. This is the property that we will be discussing tonight. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. I'm going to go straight to the comprehensive plan. Yes, right here. The applicant requests approval along with the annexation. The applicant requests approval to change the character area designation of 256-acre portion of the Bowles Farm from the North Gallatin Emerging Business Park character area to the Emerging Walkable Community character area. So the smaller map in the top left hand of your screen is the current plan, and the larger plan is what they would like to change it to. The change is requested to support the annexation and rezoning of the properties to the Mixed Use District, R8 PRD Planned Residential Development District, with a preliminary master development plan for a mixed use development. The portion of the emerging business park character area in blue that is to be retained is proposed to be rezoned to planned business park. So this is what they would like to propose a change for this. Next slide, please. Next slide. And I'll just bring up the rezoning briefly. Okay. The annexation and rezoning will include approximately 655 total acres. The proposed development will include various residential housing types, commercial development, and a future business park. Also note that Albert Gallatin Avenue extension, which currently is under construction, actually bisects the property. And if you could go back to the comprehensive plan exhibit, please. As you can see from the exhibit on your screen, the southern portion of the Bowles Farm is already designated as the Emerging Walkable Community character area. The expansion of the Emerging Walkable character area will support additional residential and commercial development that will, by extension, also support a future business park in the preserved 90 acres of the North Gallatin Emerging Business Park character area. A public hearing was advertised and is required for this item. Comprehensive plan amendments do not go on to City Council. So again, the applicant has requested these 3 items: the annexation for the property, the comprehensive plan amendment, and the rezoning with the preliminary master development plan be deferred to the January work session and formal meeting for consideration. But we wanted to at the minimum get this public hearing for the comp plan amendment tonight. And I believe the applicant is on the line and is happy to add on to this, but I think they wanted their more formal presentation to be in January, if that's amenable to the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Certainly. If we have a representative of the applicant and present, if they wish to share anything about it right now, please do so.
John Haas and Clint Genoble, your microphones have been unmuted.
Thank you. Thank you, Josh. Has Jim Harrison, is he on the line?
Jim, your line's been unmuted as well.
Thank you, Josh. I'm on the line. This is Jim Harrison. I'm the project engineer, and just as an introductory, John Haas with Edge Group has done the land planning on this, and we're really excited about presenting this overall piece of property as a well-planned design. And of course, I'm paying attention to utilities and roads and things like that. But I just wanted to introduce John. John comes with a lot of extraordinary projects that he's worked on from a planning standpoint. But with that said, John, if you're still unmuted, take it away from there.
Thanks, Jim. And you know, we worked quite a bit with Jim and his group in the past and on into the future over the course of the last 20 years or so. I did want to say, just so everyone is aware, that we do intend to bring this to the workshop. We know because it's the month of December and the timing is such, we weren't able to workshop. And so we do want to share quite a bit of information with you. Felt it was more appropriate after talking with staff to do that at a workshop as opposed to at a planning commission meeting, so to speak. And also in working with staff, there's still a few loose ends out there, primarily with some of our road network and the PMDP. But in regards to the comprehensive plan and the public hearing tonight, I do want to say that we at Edge, myself, first represented the Bowles family almost 10 years ago on this property when the extension was being discussed with them, with the city and with TDOT. And they had concerns, obviously it bisected their property, where curb cuts might be and so on and so forth. But we worked with them, and the Bowles family worked very closely, and were able to reach a resolution in that extension. And then almost 2 years ago, Stan Hardaway, who was representing the Bowles family, came back to us, and it began with the family had been approached by multiple developers. However, every one of those developers just wanted a piece of the pie, so to speak. They were looking at, as you can imagine, 30-acre, 40-acre development opportunities, primarily residential, that would require rezoning and potentially a land use amendment. So we began working with the city, and as well from the planning staff, engineering staff, but also James Fenton from economic development and his staff, to look at this comprehensive land use and understand where the line was initially drawn, which you can see up in the left-hand corner. It was drawn according to a parcel line prior to the extension being planned or really moving forward. And so what we talked about is, once that extension went through, would it be possible to react more, have the land use plan, the comp plan, react more to the physical environment as opposed to an imaginary line on a 650-acre piece of land. And another thing that happened in that meantime, between when the initial land use plan was in place, is Langford Farms, which was originally, I believe, identified as that North Gallatin Business Park designation. It had been revised and residential was added up in the northeast corner. So we really looked at the transition between these uses and buffering between these uses, and looked at the frontage, wanting to keep that more in that emerging walkable to allow a mix of uses, and then buffer to the north end between the residential and this planned business park, which Mr. Fenton shares some grand visions for that business park compared to what was perceived in the initial comprehensive land use plan. So that's really where this is coming from and where this transition is coming from. And it really began with the Bowles family. And that's why we're here tonight. Outside of that, I'll be happy to answer any questions in regards to this, or if need be, to get into the PMDP. But I, would respectfully request that we may have the opportunity at a work session to go through that and get into the details of that proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Haas. At this time, we'll open a public comment. If there is anyone in the public who has questions or would like to make a comment on items 6, 7, or 8.
So at this time, Mr. Puryear, James Fenton with the EDA office has indicated he'd like to speak.
Thank you, Mr. King.
Go ahead.
Mr. Puryear, we're excited about this development. Incredibly large piece of property inside the 109 belt line that will clearly add to what Gallatin already has to offer. Just as a reminder, Hatton Track Extension was funded in a majority because of the fact that there was a business park planned there. That's why the funding was made available to us. And the MPO continued to put extra funds into it. As most of you know, the cost overruns brought this up to maybe a $35 million project. I would like to express my thoughts that that part of the project most likely needs to be expanded some. And I'm sorry I haven't had a chance to talk to developers and the designers before this point in time. We're having to do this in a public forum, but I think it's appropriate. Most of that probably needs to be brought down close to the Hatton Track Extension, just to ensure that the northern part of that property is for development that will bring additional businesses to the area. We don't need a residential down there next to the Hatton Track Extension in that part of it. But a majority of this is just spectacular. I'm really excited about this project, but I would just like that to be put into the books that we should probably extend that down some.
James, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Or this Sean Fennell, are we limited to the amount of roads that we can put off the Hatton Track road, kind of like the 109 corridor?
I don't know. I can't answer that from an engineering standpoint or a design standpoint. I think it's wise that that occurs. We really need to limit those accesses and have frontage roads that go through there, Councilman Fennell. But I'm not aware of all the the regulations that our city has. I'm not well enough versed to make that kind of a statement right now.
Quick reminder, ladies and gentlemen, we are in a public hearing at the moment. So if we could save questions and some of the back and forth between city staff and various departments and the applicant until after the public hearing has closed, it would be much neater for Marianne and the minutes, and the meeting could progress along a little bit better. So again, if you are a member of the public and would like to speak on the comprehensive plan amendment that's being displayed on the screen, please indicate so by raising your hand. If you are a phone-in caller, you can hit *6 or, to raise your hand, or *9 to unmute your telephone. Again, members of the public, if you'd like to speak on the comprehensive plan amendment before you, please indicate so by raising your hand or hit *6 and *9 on your telephone at this time. Mr. Chairman, no one has raised their hand indicating they would like to speak on the comprehensive plan amendment. And Jillian, correct me if I'm wrong, we've received no official public comment on this item yet.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. At this time, I will close the public hearing, the public comment, and remind everyone that tonight is just an introduction to the project. We'll see this at the work session in January. Comments or questions from members of the commission for staff or for the applicant?
I would just like to say that this project will be great for that end of town over there. That's the thing I've got to say.
Well,
Mr. Poirier, this is Rosemary. May I have a moment?
I will need to ask the commission just kind of informally. I have closed the public comment, but if members would
I
like to
assumed I would be discussing it as city staff, so I apologize.
No, that's, does anyone have any objections to opening that up and asking Ms. Bates to comment? I have no.
Absolutely not.
Thank you. Go ahead, Rosemary.
You had asked about access. The original plan under construction is to build 2 access points, and that is what the city is building, aside from the elevated interchange at 109. In previous discussions with the potential developers, though, they indicated they would like to have 3. So engineering and others have told them very preliminarily that going from 2 to 3 does not seem to be a problem. We would not recommend any more than 3 curb cuts. And if the curb cuts that the developer wants are not where we are building them, then we would close off the ones that we are building and make them not accessible. I know that seems kind of counterintuitive to not be able to address the curb cuts for the developer while we're under construction, but we just could not get all the pieces and parts together in time to make those plan changes because we just couldn't. We couldn't delay the project to make those plan changes. So I wanted to answer your question. And also from being on this project way back, way back, probably my entire 14 years here so far, Mr. Fenton is correct. A chunk of this needs to be dedicated to planned business park. And I do agree with him from that perspective of having gone to the state and the MPO and asking for money for this project to get this road built, that blue area needs to extend down to Hatton Track, not any further east than it's showing right now, the shorter leg, but at least down to Hatton Track.
Thank you, Rosemary. I think Rosemary has addressed what immediately jumped out to me about the project. I know, I think everyone knew that when Hatton Track was slated to go through the property, that this property would develop. That's common sense. We will get a better plan out of a development that addresses the whole 600 acres in a planned development. We get a better plan that way than we would if it was piecemealed out, small chunks at a time. So this is going to develop, but the only concern I really want to study carefully is that a major weakness for Gallatin is our connectivity from the west side to the east side. And Hatton Track was meant to address that. And if I kind of think of Hatton Track as a major arterial, getting traffic from the west side over to the east, back and forth. We just want to make sure that the nature in which it is developed doesn't consume the capacity of this road and turn it into one that's filled with streetlights, signalized intersections down through there. So it's really important how it handled. The number of curb cuts is going to be my major concern. I think I saw Nick Tuttle flash up on the screen here a minute ago. Nick, would engineering like to comment?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Perrier. This is Nick Tuttle, the city engineer. I don't get the chance to correct Rosemary very often, but there's actually 3 planned access points, and the developer is requesting 4. But just as Ms. Bates was saying, and you too, Mr. Perrier, this is exactly what we've been talking about kind of behind the scenes over the past couple of weeks, specifically last week with the developer. And those are some things that, just as Mr. Haas was mentioning, that the loose ends that we want to discuss and make sure that we're doing the very best we can and protecting the corridor from a capacity standpoint, but also providing the necessary access to see success for the development in the area. And I do believe we've got a really good team here with Civil Site Design Group and Edge, and I believe that we all want the same thing for the area. And so we're looking forward to seeing this plan as it continues to grow and develop.
But that was a very good catch, Nick. You probably saved the developer a little bit of panic when I said 3 instead of 4, but thank you for correcting that. I appreciate it.
I think I saw John Haas's hand go up.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Mr. Chairman? This
Yes, I can't screen, so I don't know who's speaking.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this is Bill McCord, City Planner. I want to emphasize that this request that we're having this public hearing on tonight is a character area change to the comprehensive plan. We're not necessarily directing the location or the number of access points, either as they are related to this plan or even the plan that was part of the Albert Gallatin extension. So we want to focus our efforts, at least on this issue, as part of the land use and character area, and then we'll address access with specific zoning changes, unless, of course, the Planning Commission desires to also amend the comprehensive plan to establish a specific access management plan for this roadway as it extends to this property. I don't know if that's necessary, but that's something that is an option for the Planning Commission to consider. So I don't want to muddle up necessarily the character area change with the access management that would apply to either 109, which they're not showing access with their master plan, or to Albert Gallatin extension.
I'm sorry, Bill, I don't understand. Wouldn't the corridor access management plan for this road be considered as part of number 8, which is a PMDP? I mean, a PMDP involves a traffic study.
You're right, it would be, and that's why I say we reserve that for the zoning document as opposed to the character area change.
Okay. Other members of the commission, questions or comments? It's a lot to digest at once.
I've got a comment.
Yes, Mr. Wilson, go ahead.
Okay, this property has a feeder line from Cumberland Electric. It goes practically all the way across it. It feeds the old 109. It feeds Dobbins Pike. That'll need to be addressed with Cumberland Electric.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Any other members? Comments?
Mr. Pereira, this is Matt Harris. I don't have any questions on it really, Bruce. It's an exciting project, and I'm glad, personally, it's getting deferred, and we'll get a chance to do more of a deep dive into it during a work session to better understand it. But I'm, excited to see something good come to that part of Gallatin.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Any other questions? Well, then I'll throw one last question to engineering, and consider this more just educating me instead of addressing this item tonight. If frontage roads are established in a plan and it forces the traffic to fewer locations, decreases the number of access points along a road, doesn't that in turn increase the likelihood of a signalized intersection being warranted at those concentrated points? And that's pretty good for the developer, a signalized intersection. That was a question.
Yes, sir. I guess the answer to your question is it could. And so we've been talking about various cross connectivity across the development, specifically so that you don't have, say, hundreds of acres only accessing that facility at one location. And so, in other words, there is the ability to head south to Red River Road, potentially at a couple of access points, and then also maybe a potential to head north to Albert Gallatin Avenue at a couple of access points. So again, I think the name of the game for us is going to be to try to create as many options for those folks that are either residents or those that may be patrons going to whether it's commercial areas or business areas, that there's more than one option. And so that's what will safeguard us and hopefully keep us from having to add multiple traffic signals. I am afraid that we will end up with some, maybe even at the interchange. And so those are things that we are talking about right now with them. And the developer has submitted a very preliminary traffic study just to kind of give us some ideas of the overall traffic projections. And so we haven't gotten into the details of where signals may be warranted at this point in time. And really that we probably won't know that until we get into the point where we're talking about final master development plans. But we are trying to go ahead and get out in front of that. And although the developer wasn't required to submit any kind of initial trip generation reports to us, they have done that, and they're trying to get out ahead of this and work with us on those kinds of things.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Nick. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, we will, I will make them, before I can make the motion, I need to hear from the applicant. I just want to confirm, does the applicant wish to request a deferral of this item to the January work study? Well, to the next month.
Yes, can you all hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you, Mr.
Okay.
Haas.
Yes, we'll make a formal request of deferral of this item to the January meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Haas. Then I will make a motion to approve the applicant's request for deferral to the January meeting. Do I hear a second?
Second.
We have a second by Matt Harris, I believe.
Yes.
Any discussion on that?
Chairman, are you going to vote separately for the other two items? Item 6, item 7, and item 8, they're asking for deferral on all three.
Well, I was intending to have one vote for all three, but that may not be, do we need to hold a vote procedurally? Do I need to hold a vote for each one of these?
I'm not saying you do, it wasn't clear in the request.
Yeah, unless somebody tells me that's procedurally incorrect, I'd like to have one motion that covers all three of these.
I'll withdraw my second so you can make it.
This is Latisha with the City Attorney's Office.
Yes, ma'am.
As long as you make the motion to include items 6, 7, and 8, that's not a problem.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Harris had withdrawn his second, so I'll withdraw my motion and restate it that I will make a motion to approve the applicant's request for deferrals of items number 6, 7, and 8 to the January work session. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Harris. Any discussion on that?
Mr. Chairman, James Fenton. Does that mean, though, does that include the fact that the public hearing has been made on the character change? Will that need to be redone?
No. No.
And we will need a public comment. Yes, we're not taking any action. So when the item comes before us in January, it will include a public comment.
Okay, thank you.
Unless Ms. Alexander corrects me on that.
No, that was my suggestion prior to the meeting because it's such a big project that you would probably have to have a second public hearing just based on the fact that there was not enough information out there at this point in time.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor and a second. Mary Ann, we will take a roll call vote. All in favor of that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Mary Ann, will you call the roll call vote?
Mr. Puryear,
Aye.
Mr. Harris,
Aye.
Mr. Wilson,
Aye.
Councilman Fennell,
Aye.
Dr. Orgain, Dr. Orgain, Mr. Strouder,
Aye.
Ms. Hibbler, Dr. Orgain, passes 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, thank you. We will move on to item number 9, which is resolution number 2020-174. It's Lowe's Tool Rental Amended Preliminary Master Development Plan and Revised Final Master Development Plan. Which staff member is presenting this item?
Oh, okay, that would be me, Sharon Burton. I'm the staff planner. Can you hear me okay?
I can, please.
Okay, this is, ordinarily this would just be a minor thing we would do probably in-house administratively, but since it is part of a master plan, Mr. McCord felt like, well, we felt like it needed to come before the Planning Commission. This is a small addition to the Lowe's Home Center. It's 3,196 square feet. If we could get to page 5, it's a pretty good picture of it right there. As you can see, it's on the west side of the building. It's only going to be, I believe that is, it's not very big. It's only 3,000. They're just going to have to remove 9 parking spaces that are there along the property line. It's going to match the building. It's going to be the same brick. They have included some elevations on farther along in the packet. They're not losing, they still meet all the parking requirements. They meet all the landscaping requirements. Anything that gets demolished or anything during the construction, they will of course have to replace. But what they're going to do is just be able to rent out the kind of tools that people want to use, machinery, garden equipment, whatever, things like that. So.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. Do we have a representative for the applicant present?
I'm not sure if Todd Simmons or Brandon, either one are here.
I'm not seeing either one of those names. If you are representing this item, if you hit *6 or *9 on your phone to raise your hand to let me know you are representing it. This item does not come with a public hearing.
Okay. So I take it no representative for the applicant is raised.
Not at this time.
Okay. Then I'll open it to questions from members of the commission.
A question for staff. Would this be similar to, I guess, the tool room in front of the Lowe's that's down in Hendersonville in front, where it's just more of a small, smaller footprint thing? We're not talking about a real large area, right?
It is a fraction of the overall square footage of the building, Mr. Harris. It's
It's only 3,000.
Okay. So that's over there beside, guys, would be, if you were looking at the front of the building, that'd be to the right of the canopy where the lumber yard is, right?
Yes, the opposite side of the
Yeah.
garden center.
Okay, that's a good place to put it. Yeah.
Are there any other questions or comments? Well, seeing none, then I will entertain a motion if anyone would like to make a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion by Mr. Harris to approve and seconded by Ms. Hibler. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Mary Ann, will you call a roll call vote? All in favor of approval of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Yes, sir. Chair Pereira,
Aye.
Vice Chair Harris,
Aye.
Mr. Wilson, Councilman Fennell, Dr. Orgain, Mr. Strouder,
Aye.
Ms. Hibler. Aye. Passes 6-0.
Thank you. With that, we will move on to item number 10, which is resolution number 2020-171. It's Aintree Apartments, Final Master Development Plan. Which staff member is presenting this item?
Dustin Shane, staff planner.
Dustin, go ahead.
All right, this is the Aintree Apartments Phase 2 Final Master Development Plan. This is located just north of the Phase 1, which is on Douglas Bend Road. This is for 121 multifamily dwelling units on 16.33 acres. It's important to point out this is a pre-98 MRO zoned area, so multifamily is basically entitled to this property. So it's not something they have to take to council. Anybody that comes to develop this could propose apartments on it. It's one of those few remaining parcels like that. You can see the layout here on your screen. There's a stream that runs through the center of the property. These are basically, they're apartments, but they look like townhomes. So from the outside, they will look like a owner-occupied townhome community. This is their stormwater plan. They're still working with Lance in stormwater to address some of his comments that are forthcoming. They've got quite an extensive retention and detention system feeding into that stream. This is their architecture. It meets the 70% brick or stone requirement. There's several different models with 1, 2, and 0, 1 and 2 car garages. Some of them don't have garages. And this is the clubhouse, which meets the brick or stone requirement and matches the other architecture that they're proposing. This is our landscaping plan. We've worked a agreement with them and with Lance and Stormwater to, in lieu of planting more intense buffers along Douglas Bend, which would be required by code, to instead have a less intense buffer along that frontage because you've got some overhead power lines and because the applicant wants to do more of a walkable neighborhood feel along that frontage. And so they want to relocate trees and plantings into the stream area. So they're going to submit a stream buffer restoration plan, which relocates a lot of those plantings, and that's going to help us and them. It's going to help us because that's going to do a lot for erosion and water quality issues along that drainage way. So I believe the applicant is present.
Yes, hey, thank you. This is Andrew Walters with Catalyst Design Group. Thank you, Dustin. Really appreciate that introduction. Thank you to the commission and staff for your help to date. Very, very much appreciate all the work you guys have put in reviewing this and your help with the pre-app and everything to this point. I'm joined tonight by Jared Cunningham, who's a planner and landscape architect with Catalyst Design Group, and also by Johnny Ladson and Brian Metzler with Pendler, who can speak in a minute just about Pendler and their development team. As was mentioned by Dustin, I believe this is a continuation of the Aintree development, which is just to the south of this property. Phase 1 was apartments. This is townhomes. It is multifamily in nature in that sense for rent product, but it will be built in a way that could be converted long-term to for sale. But it is a multifamily project, 2-story height limit on the buildings. And I was going to briefly discuss the buffer swap that was mentioned by Dustin, but since he did a good job of covering that, I'll reserve any time to answer questions from the commission or community members. So with that, I will turn it over to Johnny or Brian from Pendler if they are on the line and would like to just introduce themselves.
Sure. This is Brian Metzler at Pendler. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead, Brian.
Great. Well, we appreciate the opportunity to be here today. Pendler has greatly enjoyed working with the city of Gallatin on our 240-unit 2-story project that's under construction just to the south of the subject site. Continue to be very impressed with the growth that's occurring in Gallatin, both the quality and quantity of jobs. And we think that there will continue to be great housing demand in the city of Gallatin. So with that, we're planning 121 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath townhomes. All but 7 of these homes will have at least a 1-car garage. We're planning a pool and clubhouse fitness center in the center of the site. We have created a lot of open space and mews in between these townhome buildings and plan a very extensive landscaping package. As Dustin mentioned, the elevations show a little more than 70% masonry. Unit interiors will include stainless appliances, vinyl plank flooring, solid surface kitchen, countertops and bathtops, planning on quartz like we are doing on the first phase. So this will be a very, very high quality finish level that we're planning, just like the first phase. If given the opportunity here, we plan to deliver another first-class project to the city of Gallatin, one that I think the city can be proud of. Our head of development, Johnny Ladson, is on the line as well as our design team, and we're here and available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I'll open it up to questions for staff or for the applicant from members of the commission.
Yeah, question for staff. It's hard to tell on the PDF on my iPad here, but the driveway length accessing the garages, how much, do we have enough room in the driveways to park a car without blocking sidewalks? That's something we've run into several times before.
Sure, I can address that. Some of the driveways are varying lengths. There's some units that have very little driveway, which obviously that would not be intended for any type of tandem parking. There are certainly some units that would allow that. There's probably some there on the west side in particular that have typically, I would say, between 15 and 20 foot of distance between the sidewalk and the building itself. In those conditions, the tandem space is counted towards the to the overall total, I believe. So where that condition exists, we do count that as a parking space. But in areas there in the center courtyard, you can see some of those units are much closer to the street. Those would not be counted as a tandem two space.
Yeah, Mr. Harris, you can see they've got some parallel spaces in various spots. I'm trying to hover my cursor. So for reference, you can see it's about, a lot of these driveway lengths are about the length of a parking space.
Okay, so I just make sure my question was clear enough, I guess. So, but if someone parks the car outside of the garage in the driveway, it's not going to block the sidewalk.
Correct. All driveways are 20-foot minimum from the back of sidewalk to the unit themselves. I'm getting some feedback from Jared, our site planner, who knew a little bit more about the fine tuning details of that than I did. But yes, all of them are 20 feet where planned. Again, now that's for specifically these units on the west side where you see that driveway. There are some where the driveways are obviously much closer to the sidewalk, where there really wouldn't be any room for a vehicle to park other than in the garage itself.
Yeah, and that's we run into a couple of projects where the driveway lengths weren't sufficient, and so
Sure.
you know, which made the sidewalk unusable and made people have to go out to the streets. So it's kind of defeating the purpose. So as long as the driveways are long enough to park a car and not obstruct the sidewalk, where it's so short that you can't park anything there, then no, I'm good with it.
Yes, sir. Yep.
Mr. Harris, this is Josh King. Because this is going to be a for rent product with a management team in place, if we do run across issues like that where fire trucks are unable to, or other emergency vehicles cannot maneuver through the site because of parking of the residents, then we can call the management agency from a zoning enforcement standpoint and have them address the issue versus reaching out and working with 200 different property owners. It's a little bit easier because we have one entity that we deal with versus, and essentially let them be the bad guy versus the city coming in, stepping in, being the bad guy and having to enforce these parking regulations.
Now that makes sense, which may lead to a second question for the applicant. You guys mentioned while this is being built initially as a for rent project, it could be changed over and the units individually sold later. If that happens, do you have, you know, restrictive covenants does that go with it to address the property management, or how do you proceed?
Well, that would certainly have to happen if that was going to be done. And I say that as a footnote. There is no current or imminent plan to convert these to a for sale product, but that would likely have to be some sort of condo regime or horizontal property regime that was then done with a covenants document to govern each unit and open space and that sort of thing. So Fendler, if you want to comment on that aspect of it.
Yeah, this is Johnny Ladson with Fendler. Andrew, that's exactly right. I mean, there are no imminent plans to convert this community into a for sale product. But there would need to be a condo regime put into place if that did happen, and that condo regime would, or that condo association would have the same goal that we do, which is to preserve the sidewalks and keep them unimpeded. So we would expect that would be, that their interests would be aligned with all the property owners in that eventuality.
Okay, that makes sense. And are these units sprinkled with fire protection?
Correct. We do have a fire protection service running, a separate fire protection line running through the site, which will also serve private fire hydrants and the sprinkler systems for each building.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Sir.
This is Bill McCord, city planner. I just want to make sure that everyone is aware that, as I had mentioned before, that all of these units would be 3-bedroom units. And as I think Matt had asked a question about parking on those, that they would be 1-car garages with many of them with tandem parking spaces behind the garage space. But then a lot of the units on the southeasterly portion, what you see there is buildings D, C, A, and B. Essentially, all of those east of the clubhouse would not have an ability to park a car in a tandem manner. Our code requires 2 parking spaces for 3-bedroom units. But normally in our apartment complexes, we have a variety of apartment units. We have 1, 2, and 3-bedroom units. And we have a parking ratio for each of those units. So the number of parking spaces they're providing is, including the on-street, on private street, and a few tandem spots, private drives, totals just 2 spaces per unit. And that may be very tight when each of these units are occupied potentially by 3 drivers. Not necessarily, might not be but 1 driver even. But nonetheless, I want y'all to be aware of that. This is an unusual situation that we face with apartment complexes because we do normally see them with a variety of 1, 2, and 3-bedroom units. This is only 3-bedroom units for this second phase.
I will jump in there and say that they're required to do 242 based on that's the minimum, and they're providing 252. So they are providing a little excess, but not much.
Right. But it does meet the parking requirements.
Yes, it does. It meets the minimum.
And this is Andrew Walters, applicant again for Catalyst. I would just note too, it is something that we certainly kicked around, and the last thing the development wants is to be known as something that's under parked just from a market demand standpoint. So there's certainly a sensitivity there, and not wanting to be under parked. You know, the balance for us is always trying to incorporate as much green space and open space into the development. And as Brian mentioned, we really worked hard to do that. You'll see a lot of these pocket opening areas and pocket parks that are really going to enhance the quality of life for the residences, as well as just general greenery and having visible landscaping that preserves the unbuilt environment. So I think that's the balance that we face. We certainly could have incorporated more parking, more surface parking, which would, you know, lead to more detention and water quality requirements and all the things that we're trying to avoid as far as our development. And so, you know, I think that there's a balance there. We are slightly over parked to sort of account for some visitor spaces, but we felt like it was the right balance for this development.
Right. And
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question to you?
Oh, certainly.
This is part of the second phase of what I really call the Clay Haynes development. Am I correct in saying that?
I
This is
believe
part
so.
of it. Okay. How many apartments? This was pre-approved back years ago. How many units was allowed on this piece of property total? Or even Bill McCord?
I don't think they had a plan approved in the past for apartments. This is part of that issue we've talked about, that prior to 1998, when the zoning was changed, this zoning classification, they get apartments. I'm not explaining this very well at all. Bill, why don't you step in and explain that 1998 rule better?
Okay, yes, our zoning ordinance specifically has an exception for those properties that were zoned MRO before 1998, and doesn't require that a preliminary master development plans be submitted for those properties. This was one of those properties that was zoned, I think, in the 80s.
Well,
MRO.
I understand that, but did it have a number of units that was allowed back then?
No, it did not, other than what restricted by the zoning code based on there's a minimum number of units that you can have, or maximum number of units you can have per each 3,000 square feet.
Gotcha.
I believe it's 3,000 square feet. So that's how the density is, the number of units is determined.
What about cutting some of the density down on this second phase right here and give us a little bit more park? parking.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to mention, Mr. Fennell, the answer to your question as far as the number of units allowed for this amount of acreage is actually 220 units. And Mr. McCord is right. It's a ratio of units per 3,000 square foot. And so we're actually significantly underdeveloping it per what would be allowed by code in that context, by 99 units actually.
But that just answered the question I was about to ask of if it was a traditional apartment complex, how many units could have gone here. So my comment on it, I will say, given what could have gone on the property, I think this is a better option rather than more traditional apartments, that it's going to have more of the look and feel of a townhome complex, not an apartment complex. So
I agree with you there. The only thing I was saying is if it's 3-bedroom and we're averaging 2 cars per household, and I mean, is there going to be any kind of rule or regulation in place that when you rent one of these units right here that you can only have so many cars, or is it going to be open to whatever they choose to bring in?
Hi, this is Johnny Ladson again with Panler. There won't be any mandate about the number of cars per unit, but we anticipate that this will be a family-oriented development, and we don't expect many roommate situations or roommate occupancy situations. And with families occupying these 3-bedroom units, we do not anticipate more than 2 cars per unit.
This is Brian over at Pendler. Just one other item that I'd add, Sean, is that like our first phase, we do think that we'll get an empty nester demographic here. And so somebody's selling a larger home that they no longer want to take care of and moving into a community where they can have all the outside service done for them and maintained, and have all the interior maintenance done for them. Our maintenance staff will change light bulbs for the residents. And so that those folks that are downsizing from a bigger home, looking for a lock and leave lifestyle, I think some of those that renter profile will probably only have one vehicle.
Councilman Fennell.
Yes.
This is Josh King. Again, because this is going to be under one ownership, if at any point during the leasing and once the site is fully up and operational, if the city does notice that there are parking problems, if we're getting complaints, if emergency vehicles cannot access this site, we will be in touch with the apartment management to have them rectify the issue if it's emergency vehicles as immediately as possible. So it will be up to the applicants to find a solution to their problem versus if it was individual ownership, it would be the city working with the homeowners to find an issue or find a solution to the issue.
I got you. Understand. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions, comments, or concerns?
Mr. Chairman, this is Chuck with the Building Department. I'd like to answer Councilman Pennell's question there. We approved, or you approved townhouses all over the city of Gallatin continually, and single-family homes that are 3-bedroom homes with 2-car garages with very short driveways on them. And this is something that's the planning department and the building department has overcome numerous times. So you can expect the same thing to happen in any development, that normally a 3-bedroom place will have a 2-car garage. If not, there's additional parking for additional vehicles there.
Okay, Chuck. Thank you, Chuck. I appreciate that. First phase looks good, guys.
I'll make a motion to approve with all of staff's conditions.
We have a motion by Mr. Harris to approve with staff's conditions. Do I hear a second?
A second.
That was a second by Mr. Wilson. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Mary Ann, will you take a roll call vote? All in favor of approval, indicate by saying aye.
Yes, sir. Chair Pereira,
Aye.
Vice Chair Harris,
Aye.
Mr. Wilson, Councilman Fennell, Dr. Orgain, Mr. Strouser,
Aye.
Ms. Hibbler.
Aye.
Passes 6-0.
Thank you. We will move on to item number 11, which is resolution number 2020172, Bella Vista subdivision final master development plan.
Dustin Shane, staff planner. So this is the FMDP for the Bella Vista subdivision that was approved a couple months ago. It's located out Highway 31. It includes 29 single-family units, zoned R15 PRD, includes one right-of-way. Basically, it's homes built up into a hillside. You can see I've circled 2 locations here. There's a little small driveway there close to the road that we'd like moved to the south. And then that second circle is a access easement that's going through a bioretention area that we need relocated in case that property to the east ever develops. This is their drainage plan. You can see they've got several bioretention areas located along the exterior. It was zoned R15 PRD, and it's adjacent to some agricultural zoned properties. So the buffers are pretty intense, and even more so because it's PRD, that requires each buffer to be stepped up one level, and they've complied with that. The applicant's proposing to do some cementitious siding in lieu of stone and brick, as you can see from these models here. So they will require an alternate architecture plan. Finally, we've put as a condition that they should contribute to the sidewalk fund in lieu of constructing a sidewalk along 31, just because that seemed impractical with the way that road is shaped and its function. And also, we will need a greenway access easement across the property because the comp plan does show the greenway coming across this specific piece of property. So I believe the applicant is present.
Yeah, if we have a representative for the applicant present, or that's a question.
I am looking for Andy or a representative of Greenlit. Here we go. Last 3652, your line is unmuted.
Everyone hear me?
Go ahead, Andy.
Can everyone hear me? Can you hear me now, Josh?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, all right. So to get straight to we are in agreement with all comments. However, with the exception of comment number 5, and Dustin, I think that's the one where you had asked us to move the future right-of-way out of the bioretention. We had the discussion there in the PMDP phase of this project that we would put that easement on top of the bio, and if that property to the northeast ever developed, then they would have to relocate our stormwater facilities because we are stubbing that out to what is currently just a residential piece of property. It may or may not develop, or I'm sure it will develop sometime in somebody's lifetime, but may not be in ours. So we felt like it was a good compromise in the PMDP phase to just say, if they ever develop that property, they'll relocate it. Now, Nick, feel free to jump in here and correct me, but that's my recollection of our conversation.
Is our city engineer still on the line?
Yeah, I believe Brian actually added that comment. So I guess Nick's there.
I am here. This is Nick with engineering. I do believe Andy's correct with his recollection. So I'm not sure what the best case scenario here is, and I was actually surprised to see a little driveway stub there. I'm not sure what that little driveway stub was. That's at the right at near the entrance. What was the purpose of that, Andy?
So Nick, currently right now, it looks like to me that both properties are sharing that piece of pavement that's stuck out there right now.
Okay.
So, I mean, I guess they would be entitled to their own entrance from TDOT for a residential application. But we were just giving them that so they wouldn't have to access it off the highway. If you want us to take that off, we can take that off. We were just trying to be a little proactive, considering that it looks like they're both sharing right now.
Yeah, I believe Brian's comment that he added to the plan was try to move it a little bit further away from the Highway 31 intersection. And so
And I feel like we can do that easy enough. So that's why I'm not really in disagreement with that particular comment.
so I can't see your plan very good, Dustin, with the other issue with item number 5.
I can bring up the real plan.
Try to pull it up on the screen here.
Asking for is, if the property adjacent ever developed, you guys would want to make sure they have access, but would want them to incur the cost of moving the bioretention, and rather than putting a burden on you to use up more of your available property to develop at this time. Is that basically it?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. So the idea would be they would need to accommodate the retention on their property, maybe create an easement for it, something like that.
Correct. And again, we understand the connectivity and we want to provide that. It was more convenient up on top of the hill to provide the connectivity there. In this case, we feel like this is a good compromise to say we're not going to fight it. They can have it, but we need to use that land right now for stormwater facilities, and at their expense, they're welcome to relocate it.
Okay, that's make sure I understood it.
So let me ask this, Andy: is there? I assume there would be some flexibility in that 50-foot ingress/egress easement, the location of it. Could we create maybe a larger window to work with for this easement? That way, if and when we do have to deal with this in the future, we've got a little more flexibility. Specifically, I was thinking,
so
looks like a little bit better opportunity closer to Highway 31E.
So actually, Nick, the way we submitted it originally was leaving that whole entire open space as open space and ingress/egress easement. It was a request of the city to narrow it down. So with that first round of comments, same way in the back, we were just going to leave the whole area available to put a 50-foot right of way where you wanted it.
Well, I think given all the restrictions and circumstance that we're dealing with, we're probably better off to try to leave our options open.
I agree with you. So for that reason, I don't mind to move it. I don't mind to just leave it open-ended. It's to say that whole area from that lot down to the highway can be used as an ingress/egress easement for a future right-of-way.
How is the condition written currently? I'm trying to get back to that on my PDF here.
Well, I'll let Dustin. I don't have it in front of me. Dustin may read it off to you if he's got it handy.
Yeah. Condition 5 says move the ingress/egress easement future right-of-way from out of the bioretention and forebay area north of Lot 1.
How about, I would suggest that we just revise it to say that instead of move the ingress egress easement, that we revise the ingress egress easement or future right of way to allow for more opportunities in Lot 1, and that'll be enough for us to be able to make the adjustments after the fact.
I'm agreeable to that, Nick.
All right, do we have any other questions then, or any comments?
Actually, I've got one other one. So the alternate architecture with the fiber cement, cementatious siding. I look at the front elevations. It looks like even the elevations that have the siding on the front elevation, it still has a stone or brick water table at grade. Does that kind of water table at brick or stone to grade continue around the other three sides, or is the request to be able to do the siding product all the way to grade?
Excuse me. So the reason for the architecture here, and just to fill you guys in on what's happened, the client that's my client, they have found an end user and a buyer, and fortunately they jumped into the mix at this particular point rather than down the road. So this is, of course, all developments are subject to change and with the economy and whatnot, but right now these are the people that are moving on this project, which is why we went ahead and incorporated their architecture with this last submittal. Now, Brian, to say that Matt, excuse me, to say that it's going around all four sides, the way that they've submitted it, we can't see that. But if you guys want to make it a condition of approval, I'm agreeable to agreeing to that because it's a small request.
Yeah, and that's something I think is important for just long-term maintenance. When you got the siding, even a fiber cement type siding to grade, it doesn't hold up well to lawnmowers and weed whackers and just everything else over time. And it's, in my opinion, is something that could start to look pretty raggedy. So I don't think it's a huge ask in lieu of allowing the variance to that.
Certainly. So I'm agreeable to you guys making that an additional condition of extending that skirt or that brick or stone skirt around all four sides, or to make sure that that's what it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if that's the case, Mr. Harris, do you want to, no one has seconded your motion yet. Do you want to withdraw that and restate the motion?
Sure.
I'll be happy to make it if you do, but.
Yeah.
I've got some wording for the conditions if y'all want it.
Yes, please.
For condition, revise condition 5 to say, revise ingress/egress easement for future right-of-way to allow for more opportunities for connection. And then I've got a condition 10, which says extend brick/stone skirt along all four sides of each home.
Great. I like the.
Mr. Harris, is that your motion to approve with staff's comments with those two changes that Dustin just read?
That is my motion.
Second.
Okay, I will second. Okay, you have a second by Mrs. Hibler. Any discussion? Seeing none, then we'll call for a vote. All in favor of approval of the motion, indicate by responding aye in the roll call vote. Mary Ann, will you take a roll call vote?
Yes, sir. Chair Pereira,
Aye.
Vice Chair Harris,
Aye.
Mr. Wilson,
Aye.
Councilman Fennell, Councilman Fennell,
Aye.
Dr. Orgain, Mr. Strouder,
Aye.
Ms. Hibbler.
Aye.
Passes 6-0.
Thank you. We will move on to item number 12, which is resolution number 2020-173. It's 1115, 1119, and 1121 Nashville Pike, amended preliminary master development plan and revised final master development plan. Which staff member is presenting this item?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Josh King representing this item. This was originally approved as a PMDP under the title Butler Properties. It involves 3 parcels south of Walmart on Nashville Pike. It's adjacent to, I forgot the name of the bank. It's adjacent to a bank and the recently constructed Shops at Payne. Next slide, Dustin. Currently, there's 3 homes built on this property. Next slide, please. The applicant is proposing 2 phases of development. The first phase of development would be the center property and a half, as shown on the screen. It would be 2 separate buildings and 3 uses with parking. Next slide, please. This is some visuals of what the property would look like. The image in the upper left-hand screen shows the existing Shops at Payne, the current phase 1, and the potential for a phase 2, which is with this would create a pad-ready site. Next slide, please. The project does meet the 70% brick or stone requirement. Next slide. And next slide. This is what was originally approved. It was a similar style of development in 2 buildings and 1 phase. The FMDP PMDP amendment in front of you would be 2 buildings. At the moment, 2 buildings in 2 phases. Staff recommends Planning Commission approve this FMDP and deem it a minor amendment to the original PMDP. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Josh. Do we have a representative for the applicant present?
Chairman Puryear, this is Andy. I'm here to answer any questions. I would like to discuss a few items whenever you'd like for me to.
Well, go ahead, Andy.
Okay, and also I believe Josh on this call, or even maybe that they're online, would be a representative from GBT, Mr. Jason Horowitz, and also another one of their project representatives, Mr. Charles Kimbrough. I believe all 3 of us are here, and Jason may be more privy to answer some questions that you may have. So we are in agreement with all comments. There is one comment that I would like to discuss here, and then another comment that just maybe a point of discussion, some clarification. So in the staff, the final comments is requiring or not requesting, but requiring an 8-foot tall wall. So GBT did the Shops at Payne. They built a 6-foot tall wall, and I've been out there to measure the bank's wall, and it varies from 6 to 8 foot, 8 foot being where they have some columns. So we were just thinking it would look nicer to tie in to a 6-foot wall with a 6-foot wall. Not trying to take anything away from the residences that we would be screening. Just wanted to throw that out there to see if if we can have some variation in that hard 8 foot. The second comment that we would like to address tonight, and it may not even be an issue, but we are submitting this revised PMDP/FMDP, and that one lot is getting pad ready, but is remaining vacant. Our plan shows a sign on that lot and the lot that we're proposing to develop now. So we just wanted to make sure that both projects, both parcels, are going to be able to have their own sign. And that's all I've got for right now, and I'll answer your questions or interact with you as needed.
All right, thank you, Andy. This item does come with a public comment, so at this time I'll open up the public comment. Josh, do we have anybody who wishes to speak on this item?
If you are a member of the public and would like to speak on this issue, please indicate so by raising your hand. If you are one of our 2 phone-in callers, please hit *6 to raise your hand at this time, and I will unmute you. Again, if you are a member of the public and would like to speak on this item, please indicate so by using the raise your hand function at the bottom of the screen or by hitting *6 on your telephone. Mr. Chairman, no one has indicated that they would like to speak on this item.
All right, thank you. At this time, I'll close the public comment. The first order of business is to determine whether this is a major or a minor amendment, since we are revising a final master development. I'll remind everybody that if it's a minor amendment, we handle it here. If it's a major amendment, it needs to go back before council.
Mr. Chairman, can I say something?
Yes, please, Councilman Fennell.
I have a conflict and I will have to abstain from this vote.
All right. So noted. Would y'all like to hear some discussion before you vote on whether it's a major or minor?
I don't see any reason this would be a major amendment. If anything, there's less improvement. It's like less parking and circulation isn't going to change dramatically unless I'm seeing something wrong.
Yeah, the definitions of major. Go ahead, Josh.
Mr. Harris, the mix of uses, food service and retail, along with the general parking requirements for those remain the same. The site retains the amount of circulation it had on it with the PMDP and the previously approved FMDP. So in the staff report, we did recommend that this be considered a minor amendment to the PMDP.
Yeah, and I tend to agree. When I looked at it, I didn't see any reason for it to be a major amendment. So I'll make a motion that we treat this as a minor amendment. If anybody wants to second it.
Second.
I'll second.
We have a second by Mrs. Hibler. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor of it being considered a minor amendment, indicate by saying aye and the roll call vote. Mary Ann, will you please take the roll call vote?
Chair Pereira,
Aye.
Vice Chair Harris,
Aye.
Mr. Wilson,
Aye.
Mr. Strouser,
Aye.
Ms. Hibler.
Aye.
It's 5 to 1, or 5 to 0, Councilman Fennell accused.
All right, thank you. So it is a minor amendment, and now we'll move on to discussion on the item itself. Any questions or comments from members of the commission?
I do have a question, and actually, just for full disclosure, last week a representative for the applicant stopped by my office and talked to me about this project. So I didn't offer any comments to the gentleman, but also want to disclose that the conversation did take place. Just to be open. My questions for maybe for staff, talk about Andy's talking about the fence being 8 foot tall, where the other development is 6 foot tall. Do you guys have any comments on that?
When the original PMDP went through, it was made very clear by City Council that this was to be an 8 foot tall wall with solid real brick, not stuck on brick, not lick and stick brick, not faux brick, but solid brick at an 8-foot height. So we continued with what the direction City Council gave staff with their approval of the PMDP.
Okay, that answers that question.
Guy, can I jump in here and add some commentary on that to add to what Josh said?
Yes, if you're responding to the 8-foot wall question.
Yes, yes. So I did represent the other project as well, and not trying to throw anyone under the bus, but my previous client really did try to get out of that wall requirement. And if you recall, we originally submitted a type of wall that is behind Panera, and then there was some pushback on our end for the wall just altogether with that original PMDP. So I feel like that the decision to go to 8 foot was in part because we were maybe being perceived, and not unrightfully so, of not trying to put the wall up. GBT is not taking that same approach. They're, not one time have they ever tried to get out of doing the wall. We're actually going to relocate the sewer to better position that wall on the property line so that we can make really a lot better tie-ins.
Mr. Chairman, let me suggest that if the applicant does not want to build an 8-foot tall brick wall, that y'all reconsider this possibly as a major amendment and let council decide. I know council was very adamant about the 8-foot wall. So if there's any inclination by the planning commission to reduce it to less than 8 foot, that y'all might want to consider the council to review that.
Mr. McCord, just make sure.
And let me also add too, it's not worth that to us. We were just simply making a suggestion to make the walls match. If it's going to cost a month or whatever, we'll build an 8-foot wall, and it'll tie in as best it can.
Okay. Well, with that being said by the applicant's representative, I think that they are saying they're in agreement with all staff's comments. Were there any other staff comments that you had?
We want to make sure that both the vacant lot, the pad ready lot, and the lot that is being developed right now can each have their own sign.
Would that be compliant with the, condition 8 that the signage be in compliance with the Gallatin zoning ordinance?
Mr.
That's what we want.
Harris.
Well, that's what, yeah.
Thank you, Andy.
Sorry, Josh.
We have looked into this issue, and we have discussed it with the applicant on several occasions. 2 signs on this master plan site would not be in compliance with the zoning ordinance, and that's one of the reasons that the staff report goes into quite detail about the signage package and being reviewed for compliance review. The existing sign at the Shops of Pain, even though this and the other development would be under the same ownership at this time, would be allowed to keep its sign. This development would have its own separate sign covering both phase 1 and phase 2 of this development with one monument sign. Each of the buildings would still be allowed their allotted signage on the building, along with wayfinding signage on the site.
Okay, so
can planning, if planning chooses to, and I'm asking this for my own knowledge, if planning chooses to tonight, can they grant a variance to that, Josh?
Planning it was not written in the staff report in such a way, but if the chair and planning commission vote to approve 2 signs on this property in violation of the zoning ordinance, they could approve an alternative sign plan as indicated as such. We would have to add a condition or modify condition number 8 to indicate that planning commission has approved a sign variance to allow more than one monument sign in this development against the guidance of staff, against the guidance of the zoning ordinance, and against the Nashville Pike plan, and against Gallatin on the Move 2020.
Thank you. And I'm sorry. These Zoom meetings are hard to know when it's good to speak and not to. I apologize. But if I may add some commentary here at this point, Chairman, if not, then
Go ahead, Andy.
I'd like to before we end the meeting or before you make a decision.
Yes, go ahead, Andy.
So I completely understand where the city's ordinances and the corridor plan, the 2020 plan. This lot, I feel like, is unique, or these 3 lots. This is the last 3 lots developing from pretty much where Panera is at Lot 4, almost all the way throughout the entire corridor. We looked at the sign placement from Panera down to Belvedere, and you've got signs that are placed, they're about anywhere from 150 foot apart to some of them only 30, 40 foot apart, where they're on each side of the entrance at the red lights and things like that. And we feel like when we're asking for 2 signs, if you look from Lot 4 to Belvedere, the sign placement are all about the same distance apart. So we feel like we're keeping the intent of what the city is trying to do here, and at the same time asking for the variance with this unique situation. This is not, we're not developing the whole corridor right there. Even with the Shops at Payne sign and the placement of where we're requesting to put signs, we're still maintaining uniform separation from what the signs are from, like I said, from Lot 4 to Belvedere. From our perspective, it's critical that we get that second sign. A lot of potential end users there are all very peculiar about signage and things of that nature, almost like gas stations and right in, right outs. So for those reasons that we feel like we are being consistent with the sign placement in this particular corridor, and that we are achieving the intent of the ordinance, which is to not have too many signs cluttering up the right of way, and that we would ask the Planning Commission for the variance to the number of signs allowed.
Well, the applicant has made his request, but unless I hear somebody make a motion to amend staff's comments,
If I guess
I'm not here.
ask maybe a clarifying question. At this point, Andy, is there there's not a proposed building for this pad? It's for an end user at this point. Is that what I understand?
Andy, may I jump
At
in
this
there?
point, we
Yeah,
are not.
yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Andy, I didn't mean to speak over you. This is Jason Horowitz with GBT. I thought I might be able to just kind of speak to that one if I may.
Sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, as you can see here in the middle. And so, yeah, we did the Shops at Payne on the east side there last year. Seems to be doing well. We are, with this amended PMDP, coming in with, of course, as you can see in the middle of this plan, it is 2 buildings, as Josh pointed out, mix of restaurant and retail, kind of like the Butler plan. We do have a user that we're working with for the pad site to the left there, plan left, the western site. And to kind of piggyback on what Andy was saying, and so let me first say, sorry, their plan is to come in with their own, FMDP, obviously meet all of staff's conditions, probably right after the new year. To piggyback, as I was saying, on what Andy said, not only are they peculiar, I think, unfortunately, without their own signage, I think the entire thing kind of falls apart. And so I know that sounds like just kind of a silly developer threat, and I hope it doesn't come across that way. It's just, I think Andy kind of said it more eloquently than I did. Obviously, we're trying to maintain spacing across what are going to be 3 different lots. We are going to plat them, these 3. I believe our surveyor submitted that plat this morning, but not to get, in the weeds and get too confused here. I just wanted to kind of jump in and explain that, like I said, we have a restaurant type of user. I wish I could disclose the name. I cannot today, but they're very excited about potentially being in Gallatin. Again, the having their own monument sign is a truly a big deal for them, as Andy said, and that is a plan. So I'll leave it at that so I don't go long, and happy to answer any other questions that I may help with.
Okay, I'm ready to entertain a motion. Is there anyone who's prepared to make a motion on item number 12? If we don't have a motion, the item will die for lack of motion.
Maybe ask one more question, Mr. Puryear.
Yes, please.
Is there, I mean, in conversations with other properties that are developed in this National Pike corridor, engineering and staffs made comments several times. This is one of the few corridors that the plans have been followed very, very well. Is there any way the applicant, I mean, if they, dedicated the monument sign for the pad, but we're allowed larger signage on the other buildings, in lieu of doing 2 monument signs, is there a path to have a compromise somewhere in there that still keeps us with our ordinance more closely?
I'll have to defer that one to Jason to answer, Mr. Harris.
Yeah, I candidly think that the larger building signage would help, but I really fear that like I said, the restaurant, quick serve restaurant user on the pad site, I fear that they will not choose this location without a dedicated monument sign. And so, on that note, I recognize that, we certainly, just to back up, do recognize the gravity, if you want to use that word, of the situation. We hate to ask the commission to go against staff or even the written ordinances. We just think that, in this instance, it based on what, like I said, Andy said probably a lot more eloquently than I'm saying, it makes a lot of sense here. And I think even just having a smaller monument, I know we haven't even really talked about sizes, and we are kind of getting in the weeds here, but I think it's important. We were coming in, the Shops at Payne monument over there to the east, plan right, is a 5 by 10, 50 square foot. I was hoping to ask for two 50 square foot signs, one for this pad, one for the middle user, thinking that would be the absolute max we would possibly get in a call it a variance, but certainly willing to compromise down. So all that to say to Mr. Harris's point, I think the larger building signage helps, but I think unfortunately without even a small monument, just based on, again, for the third time, I'll use the word peculiar, which I stole from Andy. These guys, these retailers and restaurant folks can just be difficult. And like I said, I just fear that even with larger building signage, or even a larger 4-tenant sign that as allowed under the code, I just fear that kind of that user goes away. And I think we have a very hard time, my leasing group, kind of getting the type of user that would be interested in that kind of pad set. I think without a monument sign, it's a very, very hard sell. And so I think, unfortunately, that I'm not going to say it tonight on the record, but I think the viability of the project kind of really in question, I think, if it can't have its own monument sign there.
Well, thank you very much, and we've had a lot of discussion on this, so I think we're at a point where we need a motion on the floor.
I have a question, if that's all right, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I missed it or misunderstood. The existing sign, is there space on the current monument sign for that? Or is it they're just asking for an independent monument sign for the new? I might have missed that part, I'm sorry.
I can clarify.
Go ahead, Josh.
There is an existing multi-tenant sign for the Shops at Payne, which is on the corner of Davis and Nashville Pike. The applicant is requesting 2 separate monument signages for these 2 parcels, so each parcel would be treated independently with their signage. They have one shown for phase 1, which is being looked at by Planning Commission tonight. There's a second monument sign shown on the pad ready phase 2 part of this development.
But there's no space on the current monument sign at the Shops of Pain. No space for that.
Let me clarify, the Shops of Pain is not part of this amendment. It's a separate master development plan.
Gotcha.
So I took over Dustin's screen for a moment, and I'm showing you, this is the right-of-way along Nashville Pike. They are showing one monument sign here and a second monument sign here for phase 1 and phase 2 of this development.
Okay, then I have a question. Where in staff's comments does it eliminate the second monument sign?
So we left
item number 8.
We left it open-ended. We generally don't approve signage without a separate signage plan on development plans. We usually leave it open-ended with submit a signage package to the planning department for compliance review. All signage shall be in compliance with the GZO. So it is condition number 8, and the staff report itself went into detail about the proposed signage on this. Oh, nope, that was the map.
So approving this with all of staff's comments pretty much eliminates the second monument sign because it wouldn't be in compliance with any of that. That's simply restated, it's correct.
Correct.
Okay.
Hey, John.
Well, yes, sir.
Rick Orgain. I had really bad reception, so I had to be off for a while. I think the only thing worse than too much signage is not enough signage. And if there are 2 parts to their development, there ought to be a way that we can work with the developer. The last thing, think of yourself as a tenant. And if you could only put a 10-inch by 12-inch sign out on a road like Gallatin Road, you would have 0 sign visibility at all. And I think there's a way that we could work with the developer so that within reason they could have 2 monument signs and still not detract or cause, transportation issues. The only thing worse is people trying to read a teeny tiny sign and not knowing where a business is. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
And Mr. Chairman, to Dr. Orgain's point, the finished floor elevations of the buildings, as shown here, are between 502 and 503. The right-of-way at Nashville Pike is elevation 512 at the right-of-way line. So the buildings themselves will not be even in level with Nashville Pike. They will be set below the finished grade of Nashville Pike.
So let me understand. So if they only allowed 1 sign, it's a total of 50 square feet. Is that correct for all the properties? Is that what ordinance would allow?
I have to look it up. One moment, please.
Okay. Good. I mean, I see the, with two signs, man, I see why they've got them placed where they are, but if they have a larger monument sign more in the center,
Right in between the two.
and between the two, that would be similar probably to like what you can go a little bit farther down where you got Jimmy John's and, you know, all those little restaurants in there. It's, you know, similar to all those properties have, wouldn't it?
There are two examples I could bring up. One is the large monument sign that is in front of Tractor Supply. And then if you go down past O'Charlie's or in that entrance, that monument sign, you knew there were going to be a number of tenants in that area, and the tenant space on those signs is so small that unless you're stopped at the stoplight, you're not going to know what's interior to the street. And that is, to me, a big disservice to the tenants. And the developers are really, they're locked in by what we do. And I think there's a way that we could be amenable to developers and tenants without being either outlandish or ostentatious. It just seems like there's a way that, and it makes sense to me that they're reasonable in asking for two monument signs that are limited in size. That's just my take.
I'll weigh in then for just a moment. There's no way I'm personally going to vote for an exception or a variance that violates the National Park Corridor Plan, the sign ordinance, the four that Josh mentioned, and goes against staff's recommendations. O'Charlie's across the road does not have a monument sign. Cracker Barrel doesn't have a monument sign. Logan's doesn't have a monument sign. They all rely on the primary monument sign at the entrance to that corridor that takes them in there. This is asking to place a monument sign where there's not an ingress egress. I think that's confusing in itself. They will be allowed space on the signage that's the ingress egress to this parcel. Now I'm sure that Cracker Barrel, Logan's, O'Charlie's, I'm sure that if they had the opportunity to stick more signage out on the front road, they'd have jumped at it. And they might have even said, hey, we won't come here unless we have a monument sign. But they did come here without a monument sign out front.
What they got was they got all of that with their building, and they were at street level, and they got a lot of lighting and all kinds of other things that identified them. And so to me, it's an identification thing without being risky with the traffic flow.
Well, we've had a lot of discussion. Is anybody ready to make a motion?
Josh, did you find out what the maximum sign square footage is that just one sign could be? Did you find that?
For a multi-tenant out parcel sign, the maximum per sign face is 120 square feet.
And what we would be asking for are two monument signs, 50 square foot each. So less square footage of signage in two parts as opposed to one.
That makes a lot of sense.
If the planning commission is agreeable,
And Andy, let me jump in one more time, Jason, here. I think we candidly would even, again, not to sell myself short here, but I think that Josh said 120 feet. I think we would even do two 35 square foot signs, which would be 70. I mean, almost half of what's allowed, but in two parts. Like I said, I know it's against the codes and the staff recommendation and hate to even come in with that. But I do believe that, having these shorter, smaller signs, it probably, as opposed to one very large 120-foot sign. I think it makes our retailer actually continued interest in this pad site, as well as probably safer potentially. I think there's an argument there, but just wanted to note that, like I said, if we could, I think I would be asking, if it were amenable to the commission to kind of strike that note 8 and specifically allow the 2 35-square-foot signs. Again, total signage would be well under what's allowed in the 1, recognizing though that it's still a variance and a big
Those are 5 by 7, and I don't think that gives you the visibility that you want. And 5 by 10s, 2 5 by 10s or 6 by 8s is to me much more attractive than a 10 by 12 sign that you have to jam a lot of stuff on. So
Josh, could you speak to the safety concern? Jason just mentioned something about safety visibility maybe. Could you speak to that?
No, Mr. Horowitz might be able to clarify on his comment, but there's nothing that I can add to his statement.
Okay.
Sure, Josh, all I meant there was, and again, we've not, it was sort of an offhanded comment. All I meant was, as opposed to, building the one sign to the absolute max that the code allows, while yes, it would meet code, we think we could do, and to Mr. Orgain's point, certainly we'd love more signage. It's what all the, retailers want. And we're obviously their client, we're their developer and their partner. And so that said, I felt like the shorter, 5 by 7 sign, while it's less, and certainly it's a harder sell for us for those middle 3, the single tenant building there, and then the 2 tenant building, it's a harder sell for them. But like I said, we're kind of doing our best here to retain this restaurant that's kind of a new to the region and very excited about Gallatin and this location. But as I kind of broken record, and I apologize, I think they kind of go away without their own sign. And I know a lot of retailers say that, but that's what I've been told. So that's why I keep harping on it. So.
Okay.
All right.
Sorry, Josh, about that, and thank you, Jason.
I will make a motion to approve item number 12 with all of staff's recommendations. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a second by Mr. Harris. And discussion.
I think we're doing an injustice.
Well, then, you can amend the motion. I couldn't get anybody to make a motion, so I've put a motion on the floor. But that doesn't mean y'all have to vote to approve that motion. You can make
Well, when you think about having 2 signs with a total of 100 square feet, or even as Mr. Horowitz says, 70 square feet, and you could do 96 square feet, that's a 6 by 8. Those are not unattractive. And I think we should be more business friendly, especially if they're giving up some of their square footage. They're eligible for 125. So to me, it's a win-win for the city of Gallatin.
Do they get their own access to 109 from that parcel, or do they have to use access?
You mean 31?
Yeah, 31, sorry.
There will not be an ingress or egress off 31 to that third parcel, so you'll have a monument sign that indicates turn here, and there won't be anywhere to turn.
It's just an identification. It doesn't say turn here, or it doesn't have to. There's connectivity, thankfully.
Mr. Harris, they will be sharing a driveway access with Fifth Third Bank, the parcel directly to the southwest on the screen.
So we have a motion on the floor, and it has been seconded. Any other discussion, or does anyone wish to amend the motion? Seeing none, then I'll call for a vote on the motion. All in favor of the motion, and I'll restate the motion. It is simply to approve with all of staff's 12 conditions. All in favor of approval indicate by saying aye in response to a roll call vote. Mary Ann, will you take the roll call vote?
Chair Pereira,
Aye.
Vice Chair Harris,
Aye.
Mr. Wilson, Dr. Orgain,
No.
Mr. Strouder, Ms. Hibbler.
Aye.
So it's 4-1, Councilman Fennell recused.
Okay. Then, motion is approved. We'll move on to item number 12, which is resolution number 2020-176, American Legion site plan. Which staff members present this item?
Dustin Shane, staff planner.
Go ahead, Dan.
All right, this is just a site plan to do an alternate sign plan for the American Legion. The existing sign they have, they want to take out that bottom part and make it a digital sign. So technically, or usually this is not allowed by code. There was some confusion at first when they requested it between our office and the applicant, but we settled upon requesting an alternate sign plan, which code gives the PC the power to do. So because code usually doesn't allow you to have an existing sign that's out of regs and then to modify it to be digital. But this would be an alternate sign plan to allow that in view of the fact that this sign is somewhat historic. It's kind of a gateway marker to Gallatin along the South Water Corridor. It's been in its current location for 45 years almost. It dates back to when that property was a movie theater, and it's kind of a wayfinding and marker for that area, and it does complement the Veterans Home across the road, and it helps in the American Legion's mission because it gives them more visibility. So for those reasons, we are supporting it as a alternate sign plan and recommending it to you. And I don't know if anybody is here from the applicant.
Do we have a representative for the applicant present? Okay. So I'll open it up to discussion, conversation.
Mr. Chair, let me make clear that the intent here is to remove, if you see that sign there in that photograph, is to remove the bottom portion of the sign, which is a reader board, and to replace that with a digital sign, which will have changeable messages. The top portion of the sign will essentially remain as a static sign, but they will be changing out the copy.
So if I understand, essentially they're taking the old analog sign on the bottom where you had to go stick the letters on it and just digitizing that piece. So either way, it's still a sign where the message was being changed periodically.
Right, and our code was specifically written when we changed the sign code to allow electronic signs that when there was someone who was wanting to either erect a new sign that would be electronic or replace an existing sign, that they would have to replace that sign with the code compliant sign. And they're asking not to replace the sign with the code compliant sign as part of their alternative.
My iPad battery died with my packet on it. What was staff's recommendation for this?
the staff made a recommendation for it.
Okay, I have a question, maybe it's a legal question, but can we tie this approval directly to American Legion Post 17? If this site is no longer American Legion Post 17, this sign would not be in compliance.
We don't regulate the content of the signs, so they don't have to advertise American Legion on the sign. They could advertise something that was off-site. So the sign goes with the property, not with the business.
I know that was that Supreme Court ruling, but I thought we addressed the fact that if somebody advertised something that was off-site, they become a billboard.
No, that's, it's, and maybe Latisha can address this. The state still, because the state's akin to billboards, state really is a big billboard advocate, let's put it that way, maybe in some regards. And I really don't know the difference between a off-message sign that happens to be a billboard and one that is on somebody's property that could be act as an off-message sign too. So you'd have to know if it was an off-premise sign or not. You'd have to obviously know what they're advertising, which is the content base. So it's very confusing, and I'm not sure that we would go that direction to regulate or attempt to even identify what the content is as to whether or not they have that. So, it is what it is. So they get this.
I just want to make sure. Yeah, I want to make sure that if American Legion Post 17 closed down or moved, that this doesn't become a sign for a some kind of bar with whatever message on it,
John, this is Latisha.
Yes, ma'am.
The only way,
ma'am, please.
if American Legion no longer utilizes that site, if there's a change in use of that site, then the sign would have to become into conformance with the new use. So if it's not within our code right now and it's a non-conforming sign, it would have to become a conforming sign for whatever change of use that business is. So I'm not certain as to what American Legion is designated as far as its business or site use, but that would be the only way the sign would really have to come into conformity if it becomes non-conforming with the new use of that site.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure it's not a bar. So it would be revisited if whatever the restrictions for signage for bars or that type of use, I would think that would be a change of use, but I'd have to check our zoning ordinance.
So can we add a new use in our city code called veteran support? I'm joking. Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
And I'll second that. Any discussion? We have a motion and a second. Seeing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor of approval indicate by responding aye to the roll call vote. Mary Ann, will you please take a roll call vote?
I'm sorry, I thought I was not muted. Chair Pereira,
That's okay. Aye.
Vice Chair Harris,
Aye.
Mr. Wilson, Councilman Fennell, Dr. Orgain,
Yes.
Mr. Strouser,
Aye.
Ms. Hibbler.
Aye.
This is 6-0. And Mr. Pereira, may I clarify the item before? I think I said it passed 4-1. It was 5-1.
Hey, Mary Ann, I
Yes.
did vote aye.
Okay, you did. Okay, I didn't hear you. 7-0 on that one then.
Okay. Thank you, Mary Ann. So that's the last of our official items. Under other business, we have a couple of items items to discuss. The Double Dog Shopping Center, architectural revision, and then also the urban growth boundary amendment discussion. So, staff?
The Double Dog Shopping Center architecture revision was withdrawn by the applicant. The Kennesaw Farms Architectural Review Committee did not look on the item favorably, so they are re-looking at their options with what their intent was with that item. Under other business, next slide, please. Earlier today, I emailed out the 2020 meeting schedule. If you have any questions, this meeting schedule follows the standard tried and true second and fourth Mondays of the month, along with the submittal and resubmittal deadlines. Any questions on that item? Okay, next slide, please, Dustin. This one is a little bit larger of a change. We are working with the mayor's office to basically dissolve the regional aspects of our planning commission. This covers the area outside of the city limits, but would still be kind of under our control with zoning until the county recently passed their zoning ordinance, zoning map update, which zoned those areas under county zoning. So currently we're in this hybrid situation where the city regulates the plats for that area, but the county zoning applies. So what we're proposing is to dissolve the regional aspects of the planning commission, making it municipal boundaries only, which for the residents that are located outside of the city boundaries, they would have county zoning and county platting. It would require an update to our planning commission bylaws and membership. There is currently one seat held by an individual who lives outside of the city limits, but within what's called the Gallatin planning
region.
Planning region. There we go. I'm sorry. It's a long day. So we are planning for first quarter of 2021 to make some of these changes. So hopefully we can go into a little bit more detail at the work session with what some of these changes that we're proposing to the bylaws and the membership and what this change would look like. It is a lot to dump on at the end of a meeting, the end of a 2-hour meeting in December, but we did want to make you aware of these changes that we are looking at. Are there any questions at this time?
I do have one.
Yes, Dr. Orgain.
What if you own land in the city, but you don't live in the city?
That is a great question to which I do not have an answer at this time, but I'll be happy to look it up to you and get back with you individually.
It doesn't mean a whole lot to me because I'm in the planning region, but I'm outside the city limits, and I'm trying to make myself disappear anyway. So if Bill McCord would get on the stick, I wouldn't be on any more of these meetings with y'all, and y'all can say goodbye.
We'll get on the stick right away. I'll make that my priority.
Thank you so much.
And Dr. Orgain, your presence will be missed on this board, but we are working with the mayor's office to ensure that there's a smooth transition and that your retirement is officially noted in the halls of City Hall.
I am very patient and just want to be of benefit to whatever I bring to the board, and hopefully it's all positive.
We'll throw you a party somewhere outside the city limits.
Yeah, I'll bring the beer. How about that?
Okay.
So I do have one question about this. If in the past, if let's say a rock quarry I'm not picking on rock quarries, but that's always a good example. If they were to build in our planning region right outside of the city limits, we had some control over that. If I understand the new change, we no longer have a planning region. So the jurisdiction stops at the city line. Is that correct?
That is correct. The county adopted a zoning ordinance which did not include a planning region for the municipalities in the the municipalities inside the county. So any rights or any privileges we were afforded with a planning region have been removed from us.
Except
And you
for,
do realize their planning structure is about a decade behind any city in this county.
So therefore, we need active members who are informed of planning and planning principles to advocate on the city's behalf with the county, especially ones that may be leaving the planning commission in the near future.
That's up to y'all.
yeah, so the planning, the planning region that surrounds portions of Gallatin proper are now administered by the county zoning office. We only have subdivision regulation authority that remains. And it's just confusing to the public. It's confusing even to staff that we would be reviewing a subdivision that's not within our zoning district and having to apply county zoning regulations to. So it just creates a lot of confusion for all involved.
So
Other states have done this as well.
does this mean you'll be eliminating the regional board of zoning appeals?
Yes, we will.
And what happens to a property that is bisected by the city limit line? If a parcel of land is half in the city and half out, and I think those do exist.
Yeah, and that portion within the city would be treated as a separate property, subject to the city's regulations. And then, of course, the remainder would be in the county. My guess is if they wanted to develop a property like that, that they would ask for annexation to bring the whole parcel into the city.
Is this a county motivation, or is this from Hendersonville and Gallatin?
This was from the county. The county wanted to take on that responsibility, let's call it. I don't think the problem so much was the city of Gallatin zoning in the planning region. I think it was some other cities in the county that were issues for the county. Let's put it that way.
Do they have a planning director in the county now?
Yes, they do.
Do they have a county engineer as well?
That's right. Yes, they do.
Do they have a staff of more than 2 or 3?
I think there's probably, I don't know how many on staff. There's probably 4 or 5 people on staff there.
I'm frightened about that. You've got people in White House, and you've got people in Westmoreland, and you have people in Hendersonville that would be in control of what happens adjacent to our city limits. That's a little bit concerning.
Yeah, we have some areas, and I'll take the north end of town and now on the east end of town where there's some properties that are in the county, currently in our planning region, which are for the most part developed. And then we have a lot of properties in the city are immediately adjacent to the county and the city boundary, which it doesn't have a planning region, mainly because we've annexed over the years there. So you get out there next to Carrollton and out there off Long Hollow Pike and all those properties that are not in the city or that are adjacent in the city aren't even in the planning region. So you have that situation occur. It's not like there's a circle of a quarter of a mile or half mile from the existing city limits that envelops the city that's in the planning region.
So sort of the fear is that the area of greatest growth are those places you just named in the next decade or two. And if our city has little design over what the long-term ramifications are, that Sean, you ought to be concerned about this.
Well, Let me mention that we are developing a new comprehensive plan, and we will develop that plan for all properties, at least within our, even though we don't have authority over those areas, we can't specifically apply the plan policies to those properties inside the urban growth boundary, but we will be at least planning for those in case they are annexed.
Rick, thank you. It seems like we've been working on this comprehensive land use plan for 4 years with Greater National Regional Council. It seems like it should be done by now. I don't know why, but we continuously develop all this property right there. I would love to have some type of guideline to go by, but thank you for your input.
Sure. It's worth what you get paid for it.
Right. I think the planning region is gone. There's nothing we can do about that. Correct.
Yeah, that's a little different from the comp plan. I just wanted to mention that we will be preparing the comp plan to address properties that are outside the city but within the urban growth boundary. But this is apart from the action taken by the county to rescind our zoning in the plan.
With that, essentially, if somebody wanted that property annexed in, then the comp plan would be the guidance for how it got developed. But if they wanted to leave it in the county, the city would have still no control, right?
If it's annexed, yes.
Okay, but only if they annex it. Got it.
Okay. With that is the urban growth boundary amendment discussion. That's a separate issue from what you just talked about, our planning region.
Yes, that is a separate issue. I just wanted to let you know that under the direction of the city council, actually they made back in March, I believe it was, that we have moved forward with a study that we prepared to amend the urban growth boundary. And what we'll do is there's a couple of places I just want you to be aware of that we're going to recommend seeding 2 pieces of the urban growth boundary. Essentially, we think it'll be picked up by Hendersonville. It's on the extreme west end of the city where you have to go into Hendersonville to be able to access that property. And it's out there where Chutes Lane and Highway 31 intersect. It's west of the railroad tracks and even west of Highway 386 in that area, north of the railroad tracks. So it's not even physically attached to the city by any access way. Also, as approved by council earlier this year in the summer, that portion of Big Station Camp Boulevard and the properties on the east side of Big Station Camp Boulevard between Station Camp Creek and the CSX Railroad would be moved out of the Hendersonville urban growth boundary and placed into the Gallatin urban growth boundary. And a small strip that's really a private road that extends from Big Station Camp Boulevard to Lower Station Camp Boulevard, adjacent to the Rogers Group quarry operation, would then be transferred from our urban growth boundary and most likely picked up by Hendersonville. The only other change that's proposed is that the city council wanted to add the Ocana area. That's about a 1.2 square mile area, which also includes the new Liberty Branch. I think that's what they're calling it, Liberty Creek or Liberty Branch school complex, and a park that the county is going to build as part of that complex, and the surrounding areas there that includes like Douglas Chapel Church, the community center, and some of those residential areas between the school and Long Hollow Pike. So they wanted to add that. Our fire hall is not that far from those properties, so that would increase the size of our urban growth boundary. So we're moving forward with that, and that will be going for public hearings before the city council in January, 2 of them, and then adoption of the new urban growth boundary for transmittal to the coordinating committee, which is a county level committee where those county level folks get together and they talk about that urban growth boundary changes as well and have to endorse that. And once they endorse that, it then goes back it goes to the state for approval, and then it comes back for final ratification by the cities. So it goes back and forth a couple of times, and we'll try to keep you abreast of what's going on there. So the state gets to approve it, the county coordinating committee gets to approve it, and the city gets to approve it. Any questions about that?
No, it's a lot of approvals.
Yeah.
That's all. With that, are there any announcements, any additional announcements?
Mr. Puryear, this is Josh King. Dustin, can you go back one slide, please? So to get to Councilmember Fennell's point, Plan Gallatin, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. We agree wholeheartedly. We have been working on this plan feverishly for several years, and there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Right now, we are doing one-on-one meetings with City Council and Planning Commission members. We are about halfway through both of these boards and getting feedback from all of you on the type of development, location of development, the methodology that we talked about at the 11/18 meeting. The presentation and materials are posted on plangallatin.org along with the presentation from that meeting and the video. So feel free to reference back that hour-and-a-half long discussion that we had. There will be some more updates in January about our progress to date, and we are looking forward to presenting to this board and to City Council the full recommendations of Plan Gallatin, and look forward to working with all of the above on implementing its strategies over the next several years until we are all ready to update Plan Gallatin with the next 20-year plan in 20 years.
But Josh, wouldn't it be fair to say after 4 years, certainly we should be there by now?
Well, it hasn't been that long, and we haven't worked on it that long. Of course, we did bump into the COVID thing. It's kind of set them back several months. Other than that, yes, we are behind the schedule that we would prefer. And right now, it's kind of hard to change coaches right through the middle of the game.
Well, I understand that, Bill, and I know it will be a good plan, but it just seems like we've colored for 3 or 4 years now, and it's time.
And Councilmember Fennell, what we're working on right now with Chapter 7 and Chapter 8, city planning staff has taken the lead on drafting those sections in order to move it, to be able to dedicate the resources to it and to move that part along faster than previously anticipated, with some other internal things happening with our partners with GNRC. So we do recognize that this plan has been going on for a while, and we work collaboratively with GNRC to move this portion of the plan drafting forward so that we were continuing to engage and we're making active progress towards a completion date. Our goal is still spring of 2021 to have a draft ready for Planning Commission and City Council.
Can't get here quick enough. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Councilmember Fennell.
If there are no other announcements, then I have an announcement. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Well, everybody have a great Christmas. It's good seeing you all. Stay away from the COVID.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Thank you.
Merry Christmas.